Welcome to the Water Trough, where we can't make you drink, but we will make you think. My name is Ed Drozda, the Small Business Doctor, and I'm really excited you chose to join me here as we discuss topics that are important for small business folks just like you. If you're looking for ideas, inspiration, and possibility, you've come to the right place. Join us as we take steps to help you create the healthy business that you've always wanted. Hi, folks. This is Ed Drozda, the Small Business Doctor, and I want to welcome you back to the Water Trough with my guest today, Chris Shea. Chris is a financial advisor who enjoys helping people learn how to make sound financial choices to live for today while still planning for their future, including retirement. Chris, how you doing?
Fantastic, Ed. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, and now that you're here, I feel even better. So kudos to you.
Thanks for having me.
You brought me up a notch or two.
Well, I feel the same because what you do is really good work, and the people that listen to you get some good stuff out of you.
In fact, I do believe you've got a lot of interesting stuff to offer to our listeners, and I, on their behalf, want to say thank you very much for that. So let's start out with an important question. As you know, the audience here for me is small business people. There's two things I guess you could say they face. There's the current status of their lives during the work time, and of course, there's retirement in the future. And as a small business owner, everything we do today is going to impact us down the long road. So talk about the idea of retirement and what we do today to make that a possibility.
There's an old expression, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. I'm sure that you've used that a couple of times with the people that you've helped out. And it's just like creating a marketing plan. It's just like creating a sales plan. It's just like creating your business plan. You've got to put your financial future into a plan and get it down on paper. A lot of the business owners that I work with, they start off thinking, I've got this business and I make 100, 200, 300, whatever amount of money they make per year. And I'm going to be able to sell this for 2, 3, 4x my income, and that'll be my retirement. And then they get the knowledge that, wait, you're pretty much a solopreneur. The business is exclusively you. And if you go away, all your clients go away. And now all of a sudden you're left with a business that really isn't a business. It's more of you, and nobody's going to buy it because you can't be replaced. You've made yourself irreplaceable. And at that point in time, there's an oh my gosh moment where people freak out and say, my retirement plan was this, and now it's not going to be this. I'm sure that you've heard horror stories, you've seen horror stories of people that have gone through that, and they just haven't planned. If they're a solopreneur or a small business, you don't need a 401k for your company. You can get a SEP or a simple and just set those up. And next thing you know, you are saving for retirement. I've got a client that they have set up a simple IRA. And what that is, it's a savings incentive match plan for employees from the government. And all it does is says, okay, everyone in the company can set up an IRA. They can contribute or not contribute it. The only catch is they've got to contribute a matching amount of 2 or 3%, depending upon which way they go. And the details are murky, and I talk about that with people when they actually get into it.
Sure.
But you don't need to get a expensive retirement 401k plan as a business owner. There are other ways you can do it. And the simple plan allows you to put at 2023, $15,500 into it, as opposed to $6,500 in a regular IRA. It can also, because it goes into a regular IRA, can lower your taxes. Again, it's not about anything other than planning and figuring out what your priorities are and determining what you can afford and what you can't afford to give up. If you're in your 40s or 50s and you can't afford to give up ten to $15,000 of your revenue as a business owner to plan for your retirement, you probably got to revisit your business plan.
So you talk about 3 seasons of retirement, and one of the things that comes to mind for me is, how do we stage? You say retirement is about planning. So you mentioned 3 seasons. What are those seasons, and how do they fit into the execution of the plan?
The 3 seasons are very simply the go-go, the slow-go, and the no-go. Go-go speaks for itself. It's when you first retire, you go on trips, you go on bike rides, you go for walks, you go out and do things that you weren't able to do when you were working because you didn't have the time. My parents, I use them as a wonderful example. They had 3 timeshares, and part of the reason why they paid more money than they would for a normal vacation with the timeshares. But my mother was a realtor and she wouldn't take vacations if it wasn't forced upon her. So the timeshares was a way for them to get out of their life. My dad had retired and he wanted to travel. So they had a timeshare in Key West. They had a timeshare in New York. They had one that was all over the country. They go to Key West every January. They'd go to New York. I think it was Thanksgiving weekend. And then they'd have another one where they just go someplace and they'd go to one of the locations. But they went, and they did. And that's the go-go. The slow go, and that goes to about 75, 80-ish, depending upon your health, if you retire at 65, 70. And then the slow go is when, and I use my grandparents as a wonderful example of this, they would drive to Florida every year and their own car. However, when they started to get 70, 75, 78, all of a sudden the drive went from 2 days to 3 days to 5 days. And then it became too much to do. They didn't want to fly down to Florida at the same time because that meant getting a rental car. And at the age of 78, learning to drive a new car for a period of time, as opposed to the one they've been driving for 10, 15 years, was uncomfortable for them. So their travel went from big trips to, we'll just go to dinner. We'll go here. We'll go local. And it's a slowdown period. They would have more local things that they did with friends and family than the previous period of the go-go.
Mm-hmm.
Then the no-go is 80, 85, 90 years old. And this is where everyone comes to you, picks you up to take you someplace, or everyone just drops in at your house. My father, he had a knee problem, so he was in a wheelchair. I would have to go and pick him up to bring him to my house to hang out with his granddaughter. I would have to go and pick him up to take him to a sporting event if he wanted to go see that. He was confined because of his physical status to a no-go state. This is where you also wind up with people in nursing homes and things like that, where it's just the body just can't keep going forever. And you just got to realize that it's part of life.
So the 3 seasons of retirement are actually the act or the time that occurs when retirement begins, not the preparing for it, but the actual execution of the retirement. I'll just say process, although that doesn't sound like the right word for it, but let's just,
the retirement timeline.
Retirement timeline. Okay, that sounds much better. So how do we get to that point then? So here we are. One could say, I've got to save money. So I have money to go through the go-go and the slow go and the no-go. Okay, fine. But how does one begin that process? When do they begin it? And what kind of discipline is required? What are we expected to do? When are we expected to start?
That is the question that everyone asks, right? Because if you think about your life, I've got a 12-year-old daughter. She's in elementary school. She is junior high. She is being taught how to be a high school student. When you're in high school, you're taught how to get into college or get a job. When you're in college, you're taught how to get a job. Then you're taught how to keep a job. You asked a great question, because the question I want to ask you is, when does anybody teach you how to retire?
Well, they don't.
No.
Because you're so busy working and or being. Come on, Chris, let's face it. When you're young, are you ever going to get old?
Hopefully not for
Yeah.
some people. But the reality is that I know that I didn't think about getting old and slowing down when I was a young kid. It was, hey, I'm having fun. I'm living my life. I moved from Massachusetts. I lived in New Orleans for 5 years. I lived in Los Angeles. I lived at the beach. I enjoyed the heck out of my life. And I didn't have a big thought about the future, aside from the fact that I knew that it had happened to my grandparents and it was happening to my parents. I could see it. But simultaneously, I wasn't, before I went into financial services, it wasn't top of mind. My top of mind was, particularly when I lived in Los Angeles, going to the beach and playing beach volleyball and hanging out at the bars and meeting people and having fun and enjoying life, and not fully planning for the future at the same time. I put a little bit of money into retirement plans, but for the most part, it was not enough and woefully behind, until I looked at it and said, oh my God, I am in deep trouble. And then I started a plan.
Okay.
And did what most people do, walked into my HR place where I was working and said, hi, I'm looking up my 401k contribution. What do I do? And the HR person said, I can't tell you what to do because it's against the law. But what most people do is X. And X was meet the match at the company. So I did that. And that was woefully less than what I needed to do. And I learned in hindsight, because most people get retirement wrong. They underestimate how much things are going to cost, and there's no planning. To answer your question a little bit more directly, though, around age 50 is when someone should take a serious hard look at retirement, because there's enough runway to correct the course, using some sailing terms, and get on the right path, versus if you wait till 65 and you're going to retire in 2 years, the ship has sailed. You are not going to be able to right whatever challenges you have. The other thing that 50 is, and again, this is using 60, so 15 years before you're going to retire is when you should start to take a serious look. Age 50, some people I talk to, particularly small business owners, they can't see themselves ever retiring because they usually love what they do and they can't envision something else, but they should. And which brings me to a question before I go into when you're going to start planning for retirement. The fundamental question I think that we didn't ask yet, and I'm going to ask you, put you on the spot. What is your definition of retirement?
My definition of retirement is not having to work for pay. It is to live for whatever I wish to do.
That's pretty good. That's better than what I get from most people. So congratulations on that.
Hey,
Party time with Ed. My definition of retirement is pretty close. It's being able to do what you want, when you want, without any concern for how much money you make. And if you're doing that, you're essentially retired, right? Again, I always use my family as an example because I know them better than I know anyone else. My dad couldn't wait to retire and do nothing. He liked being a goof off. He liked hanging out. He liked the social stuff. He did the Lions Club. He was Santa Claus for all these organizations. He was 6'1", 300 pounds with a big white beard. And he did it for a whole group of things. He loved it. My mom, on the other hand, never really retired. She was a realtor. and she did real estate transactions 5 months before she passed away.
Okay.
They had different visions of what they wanted in retirement. They had established different perspectives on what was important to them. And my dad would travel constantly. And once he passed away, my mom didn't really travel as much because it wasn't her thing. Her thing, and again, her retirement was she had a 40-foot boat that was in the water here in Massachusetts. And she would go to the boat from April to October, 4 or 5 days a week, and do real estate on the boat with a glass of wine and people coming by and visiting and charcuterie boards and cheese. She was working as a realtor and she would do real estate transactions, but she would do it from her boat.
Okay.
And she would enjoy that. So for her, that was retirement. Just less real estate, more boat. But the question that people have to ask themselves is, number one, what is your definition of retirement? But what do you actually want to do in retirement? Because again, it goes back to that question of who teaches you how to retire? And the answer is no one, right? It's something that isn't done very often. So I've got this program that I do. It's called Fit to Retire. And it looks at retirement in the 3 seasons that we talked about, but it also looks at it in 5 different areas, right? Because all we've talked about so far, or we started talking about, was you need money to retire. And money is just the vehicle to pay for things, right? There's no, money isn't retirement, right? You can't eat money. You buy food to eat with money, but you've got to figure out what your life is going to be like. And Fit to Retire looks at retirement in 5 areas: self-identity, social, health and nutrition, personal relationships, and of course, money. And that's where a lot of the small business owners fall into the trap of never retiring, because as a business owner, what's your self-identity? It's your business. And I'm a plumber. I'm a contractor. I am a business coach, right? And when you go to, I always ask people, when you go to a cocktail party or a Christmas party where you don't know anyone, what's one of the first 2 or 3 questions you ask?
What do you do?
What do you do? And when you go into retirement, the answer becomes, I used to be X. And all of the studies show, from the Mayo Clinic and other organizations, if you used to be something, you're now saying to yourself subconsciously, my value is diminished. And instead of enjoying your retirement, you're missing your previous life because you haven't set up a life. You haven't figured out what your new identity is. You haven't figured out that, oh, I want to go into schools and help tutor kids, or I want to go sailing all the time, or I want to be a youth sports coach, or I want to go and be if you're a healthcare provider, I want to go and do healthcare stuff at a local place 1 day a week. Or I just actually came across a wonderful organization that they hire seniors to go and be friends with other seniors. And they pick when they want to go, and they'll go and they'll hang out for 3 hours, giving friendship and camaraderie to people. And it's different than the senior to 50s, 20s person, because if people are 70 years old or 80 years old, they remember where they were when Kennedy was shot. They remember where they were when Elvis died. I'm 50 years old. I have no idea when I wasn't even born when Kennedy was shot. Right? Like I don't have a clue as to how to interact with those things. I can learn from them, but it's not the same type of relationship that they have.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing you got to figure out is what your self-identity is. And then once you figure that out, again, if you're starting at age 50, you've got 15 years to cultivate that persona that you want to be,
Mm-hmm.
so that the day you hand in that retirement slip and go off into the sunset from work, you're hitting the ground running, and you're able to say, when you go to that Christmas party again, what do you do? Oh, I volunteer at X organization. I do this with the youth. I have an active life. I am doing things. You've now got a new identity, and now you can go and actually enjoy retirement, as opposed to saying, I used to be an accountant. I used to be a salesperson. I used to be a mechanic. Whatever you used to be, transitioned from that work into a passion that you have. But you got to find out what that passion is. And usually it takes people, they have an idea of what they think it's going to be, but it usually takes 5 to 10 years to figure it out, because you're never the same person 10 years from when you are. But if at least you're thinking about it 15 years in advance, you're not going to get caught off guard. Right? So you can start to plan for what your self-identity is. Then social, right? If you think about people that go to work, who do you wind up hanging out with? You wind up hanging out with your coworkers. You'll go get drinks after work. You'll go to dinner with your coworkers. And all of a sudden you retire and you want to go get a cup of coffee at 10 in the morning with a coworker. And they're like, sorry, I'm working still. Go find somebody else.
Sure.
And your social network has disintegrated for a large part of it. I know for parents, they're thinking, oh my gosh, well, my social life is through my kids. But by the time you're 60, 65, you should pretty much be done with the kids' activities.
Yep.
Unless you're starting over at 50, 55 again. But that's a completely different story. So you've got to build that social network. You got to figure out where you want to go, where you want to hang out. Do you want to go? And I play poker. I'm a poker player. And I've got this woman that plays, and she's probably 85 years old. And she plays every Tuesday night this poker game. It's Texas Hold'em. It's $20 buy-in. It's nothing big. And she shows up every Tuesday and plays. She also works with the Council on Aging on having bridge days on Wednesdays. She does things with the town hall for all the voting stuff. She is a busybody at 88. She has a lot of friends that she has sectioned off into different portions of her life. Mm-hmm. She, again, in her 80s, she does ballroom dancing. She has a group of men friends that just ballroom dance with her. She likes to go to museums. She has a different group of friends that goes to the museums. She has a different group of friends that go to music. She has a different group of friends that go to the plays. But she set up a social life where she is busier now than she probably was before she retired, because she set this all up and she's figured out how she wants to do it. And it's fantastic. She is vibrant. She'll have a gin and tonic at the poker game and one and done, but she'll have a drink and she'll just sit there sipping it. And it's lovely. She's absolutely enjoying the heck out of her retirement. Whereas other people, you see that they haven't done any of the planning. They don't have any activities, and they sit on the couch, and all the studies show one thing with that the ability, your cognitive ability diminishes rapidly, and you've got twice as much chance of having dementia or Alzheimer's if you aren't active in your life. So it's really important to figure out your social aspect of it. Then we talk about, again, health and nutrition, right? Again, like you're at your house and you don't have to go to work, and you got this wonderful TV that you bought, and you've got this fridge full of food, and you can sit on your couch and watch TV, and then all of a sudden your health deteriorates, your mind deteriorates, and you wind up thinking, why in the heck did I retire? because I'm bored out of my mind and this is horrific. And again, that's where people start to fall off the cliff because they're not doing anything. They're just existing. And that's not retirement for anyone, particularly a small business owner, because they spent 20, 30 years building a business up. They've got all this energy. They've got all this stuff. They've got all this knowledge. And for them to just transition, just go on the couch, like that's just no fun.
Mhm.
And then personal relationships are the last thing we talk about because it was a lot harder to have this conversation with people before the pandemic and COVID. Now it's really an easy conversation, right? Because as we know in the pandemic, you went from running around having this life to you're in a house 24/7 with each other. And you had to figure out pretty darn quick how to still have together time and me time, right? You had to figure out that me and we time with your significant other. Otherwise, you wind up getting divorces. And that's what people have to figure out in retirement is how to get that me time and we time, because it's really important to have your separate lives, but to be able to come together and enjoy one another at various times. And so it's just a conversation. And then the money just pays for all that. You figure out what you can and can't do based upon what you want to do
Mhm.
and whether or not you can afford it. The money is the least important part of the retirement equation, but it's all everyone focuses on.
It's refreshing that you, as the financial advisor who has a focus in this program, Fit to Retire, says money is the least important thing, because money is merely a tool to facilitate all this stuff. And without that stuff, you have nothing to spend money on anyway. I just think it's refreshing because everybody would take the approach, how much, how do I make it? Of course, naturally, I'm sure that's part of your goal, but your approach to it is holistic. And I think that is something that's often missing in your world. Your
Not
profession.
often. It's completely missing.
Okay, fine.
You're being generous
Okay, fine.
because everything is
missing.
how much money do I have to have in the bank?
Right.
And they think there's a magic number when there's
and there's really not. It's not about that.
It's about enjoying your life and figuring out how to pay for it. So I'm going to ask you another esoteric question.
Sure.
What is money?
What is money? It's just a means to do things, to make things, to purchase things, to have things. Pretty much.
Good one. I like your definitions. Mine is money is the materialistic manner in which we purchase our current and future needs, wants, wishes, and desires. And when I tell people that, they look at me like, oh, wow, that's a different way of looking at it. And I say, yeah. And so all those needs, wants, wishes, and desires, that's all 100% emotional, right?
Hmm.
And they go, yeah. I chuckle frequently when people are like, I'm really emotional about my money. I know most people aren't. I'm like, no, everyone's emotional about their money. Everyone's emotional about their money. Money isn't ones and zeros. It's your needs, wants, wishes, and desires, and how you're going to pay for all that stuff, which is 100% emotion. Like, am I going to pay up for my kids' college education? Am I going to pay for that boat I want? Am I going to pay for that vacation that I want? Want. All 100% emotion, and none of it has to do with ones and zeros math.
It's really a fascinating approach, and I think that it really is something that bears note. As you say, it really is non-existent in this field. Now, of course, you're
trying to change that.
You're equipped to help, obviously, people fulfill those needs, wants, wishes, and desires, but right. Tools that bring them greater amounts of money. But I think by framing it like this, your clientele builds a stronger trust in you that they can actually achieve what they want via their savings, via their retirement vehicle, versus the other way around.
Right. When you come at it giving someone a hug as opposed to reaching in their wallet, the reaction is completely different. The first time I work with somebody, I tell them all I need to know from you is the year in which you were born, and the rest of it we'll take from there. And they look at me like I got three heads, and they're like, you don't want to know how much money I got in the bank? I'm like, it's irrelevant, because the process is the important thing. It's about going through and doing it the right way and asking the questions and showing how I work with people, as opposed to just saying, oh, you've got $300,000, is that we're going to invest you. Because $300,000, if you spend $20,000 a month, is a completely different amount than if you have $300,000 and you spend $7,000 a month. And if you're 50 or 60 or 40 or 20, they're all completely situational. Right. And everything about every person has a different set of circumstances, and every person has to be treated as though they have a unique set of circumstances, and that theirs are the most important because they are the most important to them. And I don't care what your circumstances are. We'll find out a solution if you want to work with me. That I don't need the details to show you what the process is. When you're comfortable enough, you'll share with me the process. We'll put the real numbers in there. We'll show you what we need to do. I'll show you how I invest your money, asset classes, all that sort of unfun stuff that no one wants to talk about. I can go into that deeply, but the more important part is always, and your small business owners know this, the more important thing is always the person and the way that you make them feel. It's not about, a roofer. It's not about the quality of the shingle. You don't pick the roofer because they got the better shingle. It might be an influencing thing, but you want somebody putting a roof on that you can trust that they're going to actually do it right. And if they do it wrong, they're going to come back and fix it. As opposed to put it up and, oh, you got a leak? Well, tough luck.
Better luck next time.
Yeah. $20,000 and I made a mistake and now your house is destroyed.
Yeah, good luck to you. Chris, I don't know about you, but this time flew by for me, and it's time for us to wrap this up. But before we do, I want to ask you if you have anything you'd like to leave us with, any parting comments here that are particularly important to you.
If you're a small business owner, don't hang your hat in your life and your future on the fact that you're going to be able to sell your business unless you've already, while you're working, extricated yourself from your business. If you are still doing, you can't sell it and make a huge windfall off of it. Now, if you just show up and you make a lot of money and you're just a figurehead, absolutely, you can sell that business and that'll be a retirement nest egg. But unless you get there, you've got to plan another way to get to your retirement needs, wants, wishes, and desires, and start by just, believe it or not, picking up the phone and calling somebody who's a financial professional and saying, how do I get helped? Again, I'll reference my mom. She was a realtor, like I said, for 35 years. She did a ton of sales and she found a financial advisor 30 years ago. She wound up a millionaire when she retired. And most realtors don't do that because they sell a house, spend all the money, sell a house, spend all the money. This financial advisor set her up so that when she was 70 years old, she probably didn't have to work again, which is why she just dabbled in real estate for the next 8 years until she passed away. And it was probably younger than we wanted, but she did what she wanted. She lived the way she wanted. She enjoyed it. But she had started the plan 30 years before. So plan. You plan your business, plan your exit from your business too.
Well, Chris, I want to thank you very much. And having you here today was a joy for me, as I'm sure it will be for our listeners. Thank you so much for everything, Chris. This is Chris Shea, financial advisor, but not just a financial advisor, somebody who brings us a completely different perspective on our fitness for retirement. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ed. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Chris Shea is a registered representative offering securities and advisory services offered through Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC, a member of FINRA, SIPC, a broker-dealer and registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity, branch located at 20 Corporate Woods Boulevard, second floor, Loudonville, New York, 12211.